Hello everyone, my name is Xu, and I am a student in my final year of electrical and biomedical engineering. And we also have Sijie, who is also in her final year of electrical and biomedical engineering, and Harris, a first year MEng in electrical engineering. And we are going to be speaking to you today about the epileptic seizure detection based on electroencephalography, which is the electrical signal of our brain, and the convolutional neural network, which is the class of deep neural networks. To begin, I will give you a brief introduction of all the background information, including the anatomy of the brain, epileptic seizures, EEG, and after that we will go through a case study done by us on the detection of epileptic seizures. Our brain is an amazing 3-pound organ that controls all functions of our body. It is composed of the cauliflower-shaped cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the tube-shaped brainstem. The cerebrum is composed of different lobes which perform higher functions, like interpreting touch, vision, and hearing emotion. The cerebellum under the cerebrum controls balance and coordination, and the brainstem acts like a relay center connecting cerebrum and cerebellum to the spinal cord, performing automatic functions such as breathing, heart rate, and body temperature. So seizure, as we usually know, is a sudden alteration of behavior due to a temporary change in the electrical functioning of the brain. In epilepsy, the brain's electrical rhythm has a tendency to become imbalanced, resulting in recurrent seizures. There are different types of seizures. Some affect a part of the brain, which is referred to as focal seizures, and others affect the whole brain, which is called generalized seizures. For approximately 70% of people who are diagnosed with epilepsy, the cause is unknown. For the remaining 30%, the seizures are symptoms of a known cause, including birth trauma and congenital problems in newborns and infants, and others like head trauma, infection, and stroke in children, adolescents, and adults. Seizures can vary significantly in their symptoms and severity. Some are transient and nearly imperceptible, while others can be far more severe and unnerving. Seizure symptoms depend on the type of seizure and the patient is having, but in general could have uncontrollable jerking movements of arms and legs, loss of consciousness or awareness, confusion, stirring, strange sensations and emotions, or sudden falls. There are different phases of an epileptic seizure, including preictal, ictal, and interictal states. The segment with an hour duration before each seizure was defined as a preictal state. Ictal state is a neurophysiology expert labeled clinical seizure, and the EEG signal data of each patient, which was neither preictal nor ictal state, were defined as the interictal state. The figure on the right illustrates the corresponding EEG signal for each state. Now I will hand it over to Sijie to talk more about EEG and our case study.
Electrical encephalogram (EEG) is a test that detects electrical activities in the brain. It is typically non-invasive, with the electrodes placed along the scalp in special positions, and each electrode site is labeled with a letter and a number, so that the EEG can get recorded in each channel. EEG is most often used to diagnose epilepsy, which causes abnormalities in EEG readings. This is the comparison of normal EEG and EEG including a seizure. The signals are collected from multiple electrodes. In normal brain activity that shows in Figure A, cells are activated asynchronous, which generated only small electrode potentials on the scalp. The time course of pathologic EEG activity is often abruptly and discontinuous, but can also show a sinusoidal activation patterns, which is in Figure B. The medical term for such irregular but repetitive EEG activity is rhythmic pattern. Commonly, evolution in frequency and amplitude of rhythmic patterns can be observed during seizures. With all the background information present, Next, we'll be going into a case study carried out on the epileptic seizure detection based on EEG and CNN. The database used in this study was an open-source EEG database from CHB MIT. The recordings were collected from 23 children with epilepsy using scalp electrode, included 17 females that ranged in age from 1.5 to 19 years old, and 5 males that ranged in age from 3 to 22 years old. All subjects were asked to stop related treatment 1 week before data collection, and the sampling rate for all patients was 256 Hz. We experimented with different CNN pooling layers, but we were not able to add additional layers due to the limited memory. The number of epochs were fixed at 5. The training validation data split was kept at 66% to 33%, and accuracy and loss are used as measure in order to evaluate and performance. Apart from manually detecting of a seizure from EEG, machine learning methods can be employed. Conventional machine learning, however, requires manual feature extraction. Handing over to Harris, who will talk about convolutional neural network.
As discussed earlier, a convolutional neural network is a deep learning algorithm that can recognize and classify features in images for computer vision without the need for manual feature extraction. It is a multi-layer neural network designed to analyze visual inputs and perform tasks such as image classification, segmentation, etc. However, the same principles used in computer vision can be extended to biomedical applications such as detecting seizures from EEG signals. Each architecture we deploy is further divided based on whether we are feeding in time domain or frequency domain data. The raw time domain signals were transformed to frequency domain signals using FFT or fast Fourier transform. The original architecture consists of a convolutional layer where 5x5 kernels are trained, which means that the CNN will find the values for the filter depending on the training data to yield appropriate label results, followed by pooling for time domain and mean pooling for frequency domain. Pooling layers are generally added to reduce the number of hyperparameters and hence reducing overfitting. The final layer is a fully connected layer whose output is passed through a nonlinear activation function, in this case the sigmoid function. For the extended CNN architecture, a convolution layer and a pooling layer are added to the original one. We are restricted by resources to add further layer as it requires more memory. Let's now discuss the results. Accuracy is defined as shown in the equation. The plots show that accuracies start from some minimum value rising to a steady state value where they saturate. We can clearly see that the results for frequency domain are significantly better than the time domain counterpart. The opposite of accuracy is the loss metric defined as shown in the equation. And the exact opposite trend can be seen for the loss plots where the losses are maximum and they drop to a steady state value. The plots for accuracy against each patient ID are shown for both original and modified architecture. We can see that there are some minor fluctuations for the original architecture, hence the model performs better for some patients than the others. But for the modified architecture, the fluctuations are quite large, and since the training got interrupted, the model performance decreases as the patient ID increases. A summary of statistics for architectures is shown in the table. The magnitude of fluctuations can be observed in the variances for respective architectures. It can be seen that the simpler model produces a higher accuracy and a smaller variance in the accuracies over the patients. But this cannot be concretely concluded because the training did not take place on the entire 24 patients in the extended architecture due to restriction on resources. In order to conclude, I will say that the objective of training a CNN to detect various phases of an epileptic seizure using EEG data was achieved quite successfully. The results demonstrate that a modified architecture is not necessarily required when a simpler architecture gives satisfactory results. Furthermore, the architecture involving frequency domain signals outperforms the ones involving time domain because frequency domain signals provide more insight on the data in order for the network to extract the hidden features. For future work, we can develop an online system along with an alerting mechanism which can be used to avoid fatal injuries. The following is a list of references that we used for the implementation of the project. Thank you for listening.